Hi everyone and welcome to this week's Wallsend History Story. This week is video number 4 in the look back at some of the shops that used to be on Wallsend High Street. As said with previous videos, this is what used to be there and what's there now. And for a lot of the older shops, they will only have adverts as pictures. However, I am hoping to find a few old pictures that I can use again, although I do know for certain that there will be no photos for some of the shops, simply because they are too old or because of copyright. And I just want to add, as I have said before, this is just a small selection of the shops. There's still a lot more, and some of them I will hopefully cover in the next video. Now, there might not be a lot of history about these shops to tell, so a lot will simply be a description and some of my memories of the ones I can remember. And I'm not old enough to remember some of them, but not so much the ones in this video, as they are a bit more recent. So anyway, I hope you will enjoy it and find it interesting. The first shop I'm going to cover this week is Disque. This shop used to stand at 55 High Street East. It was another shop like Tompkins that sold records, but it also sold a lot of musical instruments. And although it was quite a small shop, the window was always jam-packed with lots of items. And I do remember spending quite a lot of time looking in the window at the various guitars. Now, I always wanted one, but I never got one. Though I think I did probably get my school recorder here. Not that I was ever any good at playing that either. And maybe it is time to admit to the fact that I used to make sure I stood at the back of the class, away from the teacher, and just move my fingers about, hoping that no one would get close enough to hear the awful noise I was actually making. It has to be said that I'm not very good with musical instruments at all, unless you count the triangle or the cymbals, or the bass drum. I was actually quite good with the bass drum until the neighbours complained. I had several years' worth of piano lessons when I was a kid, and I still can't play much more than chopsticks. But I think really that was because I just didn't have the interest when I was younger, as my piano teacher really was very good. But I think even she lost the will to live with me in the end. My nana, on the other hand, was really good. She was self-taught and even played the piano sometimes for the silent movies when she was a child. And I strangely come from a musical family, as her uncle was a professional musician in Kent, but sadly none of it rubbed off on me. Anyway, enough about that. Another thing I remember looking at in the window at Disque was the, as I used to call them at the time, jazz band sticks. Of course, the actual name is a mace. And I, like many kids back then, had the homemade kind. This was usually a bottle of some kind taped on the top of a broomstick. But the real thing obviously looked so much better. I do believe that the bottle, we used to add something to it, sand or something like that, to make it a little bit heavier so that it was more like the real ones. Now, the one that you can see on the screen at the moment is one that I made when we organised the reunion event at Segadunum back in 2015, and we needed old toys, etc., for the displays. Now, I did plan to get rid of this one recently, which is why it maybe looks a little faded in places, because it's been outside for a while. But then I changed my mind, and you never know, it might actually come in handy again soon for another event planned for next year. Now, I did finally get a real mace second hand, as my nana refused to buy me a new one, and the first thing that I did was point it in the air and stick it through my nana's ceiling, and I wasn't allowed to use it in the house after that. Although Disc wasn't one of my favourite shops, I did go in there every now and again, and I think sometimes I did go in when I was looking for sheet music, when I actually thought that I was going to be able to play the piano. But one thing I would do is I would really love to hear any of your memories of the shop, so please tell me about them in the comments below. Today in the same place you will find the T and More hairdressers, and this shop has been there since at least 2012. Before that, I know it was a shop called Live and Loud, which some of you may remember. And the shop front itself hasn't changed all that much from the days when it was Disc. It's just basically had a paint job. I haven't been in either of the shops that took the place of Disc, so I can't really say all that much about them. I think I have said before that sometimes the What's There Now shops often won't have much information to go with them. The next shop I'm talking about is Burns Bargains. Now, this shop stood at 166 High Street East. I know this was a very popular shop in Wallsend, as whenever the name comes up on the Wallsend Memories Facebook group, it gets hundreds of comments. But I personally can't remember the shop all that well. And I know that may seem strange after saying it was so popular, but when I was shopping on the high street as a kid, it was usually with my nana, and she didn't often come down this end of the high street. So I actually remember Lewin's much better, which was a very similar kind of shop, and I do hope that I can cover that in another video soon. Burns Bargains wasn't the biggest of shops, but every inch was used. It was jam-packed with all kinds of goodies for those Wallsenders looking for a bargain, which was very useful in a time long before anyone had ever heard of, let alone opened, the first pound shop. And one of their adverts said it was the place to go for cheap toys, gifts and kitchenware. I believe the owner, or at least one of them, was a man by the name of John Byrne, and from the things people have said in the past, he was very well liked and very helpful to his customers. And I would really love to hear your memories of this shop in the comments below. In later years, the shop would become the Cats Protection charity shop. I can't say for certain when this opened, but it was certainly there from at least 2008. And while the shops around it changed quite frequently, the Cats Protection would remain the same until at least 2020, when sadly the retirement of the leaseholder and not being able to find anyone else to take over from him, the shop finally closed down. Now, I have to admit that it's a big miss, the Cats Protection, for many people, and I loved the shop. There was always a lot of great bargains to be found, and I loved the idea that I was helping the cats charity. Being a big cat lover myself, I think I kind of gravitated towards the shop for this reason. And the shop now is something known as One Care Solutions Recruitment Agency. And I have to be entirely honest and say that I know absolutely nothing about this new shop. So if anyone can tell me anything about it, please do so in the comments below. The next shop I'm going to talk about is Rooney's. Now, this shop was on High Street West, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of you watching will remember this shop well. It was a tiny little shop, and when I was a kid, I used to look at it and wonder why it was so small compared to the rest of the shops on the High Street. And the truth is, I still don't really know why they never made it as tall as the shops next to it. But as the area where it was built was once a gap, I guess they thought a single-storey building was all that was needed. Rooney's, as I'm sure most of you will know, was a jewellery shop, and of course they also did ear piercing. And although I didn't get mine done there, I do know a lot of people who did. Sadly, there's not many photos of the shop, and this one is about the best I can do, and you can only just see it. You do pretty much need to squint and turn your head sideways to spot it. And I was trying to remember what the sign used to say, but I am not certain if it was watches and jewellery, which was above the name, or if it said something else. And it's impossible to read on this photo, so can anyone watching remember what it said? I don't know for certain when Rooney's closed, but by at least 2008 it was Ramsden's Pawnbrokers. And these days in the same location you will find something known as the Check Shop, which I believe is very similar to Ramsden's, but having never been in, I can't say for certain. But I do know that one thing that hasn't changed, and that is the fact that it's still the smallest shop on the high street. Finally this week I am going to do a very quick mention of Fairbairns, the shoe shop that used to stand at 5 to 9 High Street East. It's actually visible on this old photo next door to Hills, which I did cover in an earlier video. As a shoe shop, there's not a lot to really say about it, but I kind of wanted to include it so that I could include this advert for the shop, as I am sure that many of you will remember the original pods. Obviously, the shop had been there for many years, as it was there at the time the earlier photo was taken, which may well have been in the late 50s. And we did once have quite a few shops in this little part, shoe shops in this little part of the high street, as Fairbairns was very close to the Benefit shoe shop, and it was also just over the road from Corner's shoe shop. Today, in the same location, you will find the Giraffe Let's shop. And back in 2008, it was the Halifax. And then by 2010, it was Your Move estate agents, who were there until at least early 2016. And it does seem to have stood empty for a little while after that, before it became Giraffe Let's in at least 2020. Now, this is another shop that I've never been into, but I do kind of like the big giraffes that stand in the window. However, sadly, you can't actually see them on this photo because when I took the up-to-date picture, the shutters were down as the shop was closed as I took the photo on a Sunday. And if anyone is wondering how, when I mention some of the more recent shops, I often say 2008, this is because I do tend to check out Google Maps and their helpful other dates on Street Views to see what shops I might have missed before the ones that are there now. And it's definitely not because I'm obsessed with 2008. Anyway, I do hope you have found this short little video about a couple more of the old shops on the high street interesting, and that you have enjoyed it, and that it's maybe brought back a few good memories for you. And just like all the other videos, as I've already said, I'd really love to hear some of your memories of this week's shops in the comments below. And I just want to say that this is actually my second attempt at recording this video, as on the first attempt I got very close to the end, my throat dried out, and I decided to have a 5-minute coughing fit. And although I was nearly at the end of the video, I don't think anybody really wanted to listen to that. But anyway, I do thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again very soon.